Hello and hope you had a good time. Today we want to talk about the lightest and heaviest bones of the human body. Bone is a living and strong material that builds the skeletal scaffold of the human body. The bone is a strong base on which other organs rest, and in many places the bone surrounds and protects sensitive tissue. Bones are the site of production of white and red blood cells and are a source of minerals, especially calcium, which they provide whenever the body needs them. Our bones make 14% of our total body weight. There are about 270 bones in the body at birth. As a child gets older, some of these bones stick together and eventually form 206 bones for an adult. Bone is a living tissue. It grows, nourishes, deforms, and dies. Now let's go to the lightest and heaviest ones. Subscribe our YouTube channel to watch the rest of this video and more. It is a bone in the middle ear of humans and other mammals that is involved in transmitting vibrated sounds to the inner ear. The stapes small bone is one of the bones in the middle ear. The stapes receives vibrations from the anvil to which it is connected horizontally and transmits them to the medial oval valve. The stapes is the smallest and lightest bone in the human body and is now named because of its resemblance to the stapes. Otosclerosis is the most common cause of conductive hearing loss. It is a bone disease often occurring when the stapes is attached to the oval valve and loses the ability to transmit sound, and the most important treatment for this disease is surgery. The stapes is the third and last of the three bones in the middle ear. The stapes bone is a staple bone that rests on an oval valve that is connected to it by a circular ligament. The base of the stapes is articulated to the oval valve and its head to the anvil. These joints are connected to the posterior and anterior bases. The stapes is the smallest bone in the human body, measuring 2.5 x 3 mm, with a larger dimension along the head of the base. The stapes is formed from the second arc of the throat during the 6 to 8 week of the embryon's period. The central cavity of the stapes is caused by the presence of a staphylococcal embryo, which then decomposes. The stapes is one of three bones in mammals. In birds, the tibial-like bone is usually called the colabran. Also in reptile, both words are used. In fish, the stapes-like bone is commonly referred to as the subcutaneous lamellar bone and is usually part of the gill arc that holds the airway or jaw, depending on the species. The equivalent word in amphibians is pars media plectra. It seems that the size of the stapes is relatively constant in different ethnic groups. In 0.01 to 0.02% of people, the stapes artery does not return and remains in the central orifice. In this case, you may hear a thumping sound on the phone that has this mode, or there may be no signal at all. Rarely in some people there may be no stapes. The stapes located between the anvil and inner ear transmit sound vibrations from the anvil to the oval cavity. The stapes is also fixed by the stapes muscle, which is stimulated by the facial nerves. The femur is the tallest organ in the human body and at the same time the largest and strongest bone. This bone is the first bone in the lower limb to be placed at the upper end of the pelvis, forming the hip joint. This bone is articulated from the top area of the acetabulum with the pelvis and form the bottom in the knee area with the large bone of the leg and by ligaments with the thinning leg and the patella. The upper end of the femur consists of the head, neck, large ridge and small ridge, and the neck connects the head bone to the trunk. The length of the neck in the height is about 5 cm, which is at an angle of about 125 degrees to the trunk. The femur protrudes from the outer surface of the upper end of the bone and is palpable under the skin. There is also a small bulge Below the neck on the inner posterior surface. On the posterior surface of the trunk, there is a rough line that is very thick and distinct. The femur is the longest and strongest bone in the body. The human femur is on average 48 centimeters long and 2.34 centimeters in diameter and can support up to 30 times the weight of an adult human. The lower end of this bone forms the knee joint with the tibia. It's upper and has a convex part called the head. Below the head is a narrow section 5 centimeters long called the neck. At the upper end on the outside there is a distinct rectangular ridge called the large blotch, and there is also a smaller conchal block in the lower back of the neck called the small bulk. The anterior surface of the trunk is smooth while the posterior surface of this bone is rough and has a raised line called the rough line. In the interior front lower and of the femur, there is a joint surface for the patella of the knee. At the lower end of the femur, there are also two separate protrusions called condyles, which at the joints of the femur with the tibia. The bites are named according to their internal and external nature. The head of the femur is round and spherical in shape and attaches to the lower parts by a part of the bone called the femoral neck. The angle between the neck and the trunk of the femur is important and varies in some disease. This angle is naturally around 125 degrees. A fracture of the femoral neck, often seen in older people following osteoporosis, often requires surgery. Below the femoral head are two other protrusions called the large trochanter and the small bulge. These two ridges are the joints of strong muscles around the hip joint.